I'm Tony, and I am here with the wonderful Dr. Blanco.
Oh, thank you.
And we are in a new month, and so we have another series coming for you. And this one is about trauma. And now we do talk a lot about trauma here because it's kind of what we do. But this month you're going to be going through relating the trauma to different movies.
Yes. So I went with let's look through different eyes the concept of trauma. And what a better way, I mean, have you gotten lost in a movie, like with your big bucket of popcorn and you're sitting there and your emotions are just coming out, bubbling out. You're either screaming at the TV or everybody in the theater just jumped up because something came out of nowhere. I wanted to kind of have a conversation about how we can see trauma in movies. So I wanted to start with generational trauma.
I love that.
Yeah. So generational trauma, it's the stuff that we carry that is not ours. The stuff that our parents carried, the grandparents, great-grandparents, and we unknowingly carry that and
I was
repeat
about to
it.
say, because we don't even realize, we just think, well, this is normal, this is what we do, type of thing. And so we continue to carry it on through generations.
Yeah. And hopefully with this series, we'll get to identify, or with this particular one, get to identify what are we doing so that we don't mess up our kids too much. We're always going to mess them up.
Absolutely. I know I am.
But not too much.
So for generational trauma,
I chose Encanto. We're not going to talk about Bruno. I have heard that song 1,000 times in a day. So generational trauma in the movie Encanto was amazing. First of all, we are looking at how the trauma started. We see at the beginning of the movie, Abuela trying to leave this place with her husband, with Abuelo Pedro, and evildoers trying to kind of push them away from that land. And when they are trying to speak reason to these bad people, what ends up happening is that the abuelo dies. There is no change in their conditions, and then Abuela has to kind of get herself together. She doesn't have time to grieve the emotion of losing her beloved. She has 3 little kids and all these people that are following her
and counting on her.
So they get to this place, Encanto, and she creates Casita Madrigal, and one of their mottos is, we are here for the community. And one of the songs has that, like, they make the community counts on them. With that comes such an ingrained feeling of, am I good enough for this? Am I smart enough? Am I beautiful enough, Isabela? Am I strong enough, Luisa? Can I turn into what you need, which is Camilo? Am I good enough, which is little Antonio going to his door and Mirabel having not been able to get a gift.
Right. And how that then scars her, and that's like everyone looks down upon that.
Yes.
And that those gifts identify them. That's how they're known. Luisa as the strong one and Isabella as the pretty one. Like, they don't know themselves outside of that.
Exactly. And that is generational trauma. When we carry these roles that our predecessors have decided for us. It's an us versus them kind of mentality. And what I find wonderful about this movie, because Abuela Alma kind of keeps a tight ship, is that the moment where this ends, this generational trauma ends, is at the moment that is most vulnerable and most authentic. Meaning that when we are able to identify that there is generational trauma, acknowledge what we've been carrying without even knowing, and being willing to shift, to work this with a therapist and really dig deep, that moment of vulnerability, that moment of forgiving the people, if there is space for forgiveness. Some of these patterns are unforgivable. Forgiving that person, but also forgiving yourself for having gone through the whole script,
for almost falling into it and feeling like, oh, I love that. And we were talking earlier before we started the video about that you can't change other people.
No. The change starts inside of us. We can change our parents for carrying over generational trauma, our grandparents. We have to identify and we have to find our little doorknob. I love that image in the movie. We have to find our little doorknob and say, this is the door that I'm going to open. This is the process, therapeutic process that I'm going to engage in. This is the vulnerability and the authenticity that I'm willing to sit with and try out.
And scary that I'm willing to dig into, because I don't know that it's about. I don't know how you would word it, but it's about finding that generational trauma and pinpointing it. And it might seem like it's something so small, but it makes me think of like the ripple effect when you throw a rock into a lake,
the water.
Yeah, and that so it might be the smallest thing that you're like, oh, that's not a big deal. When actually there is some really deep rooted stuff and just habits, whatever you want to call them, that are actually your trauma.
Generational trauma.
Absolutely.
So if anything here kind of grabbed your attention, if you have noticed generational trauma patterns in your family, if you are willing to dig deep and just kind of explore all that, give us a call. 813-434-3639 and let Harper Therapy be your home for hope, growth, and healing.
You're so good at that. See you guys next week.
See you. Bye-bye.